Pop quiz. How do you introduce a character through gameplay? I'm not talking in-game banter or cutscenes or anything like that. I'm asking how a game can show you who a character is and what they're all about simply through play. You may be thinking of how God of War's brutal Hydra fight conveys the rage-induced madness of Kratos, or how the Arkham games use a combination of stealth, combat, and detective vision to make the player feel like Batman. Or maybe you thought of an entirely different game that I simply haven't played yet. There are plenty of great examples out there, but today I want to discuss one in particular, and that's the end of Another Round from Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception. The level begins something like this. Nathan Drake and his old friend Sully have just beat up a bunch of goons in a British pub after a deal went south. He thinks the worst is over when this massive bloke rams him into a dirty men's washroom that the player now has to fight their way out of. Your opponent towers over you. The player attempts to fight, but Nathan's movements are slow and clumsy as he's just been in about a dozen fights already. Despite this, the player continues to stand back up, trying different strategies as Nate smack talks this Goliath on your behalf. By the end, the player only narrowly outwits their titanic opponent before Nathan stumbles out of the bathroom on his way to another series of fights. Now, I'm aware this scene isn't perfect. The combat system is fairly shallow, relying a bit too much on QuickTime events, and the set piece is somewhat diminished when you face off against this giant for hire about 3 other times in the game. But I love this level because Another Round is a pure distillation of Nathan Drake and the Uncharted series as a whole. Don't believe me? The level starts out with the main protagonist sauntering into the pub, showing Nate's suave demeanor. When the buyer tries to pull a fast one on the duo by paying with counterfeit money, Nate calls him out on it, showing that he isn't all walk, he's got a head on his shoulders as well. The buyer, of course, doesn't like this, and when a fight breaks out, you see that Nate knows how to handle himself when things go down. And when Sully needs a bit of help, you see he's someone who fights for his friends. Lastly, when we enter the bathroom brawl, we see that Nate is a glutton for punishment who is in way over his head. But we also see he's a man who refuses to back down and will try to outwit his opponents if he can't outfight them. And all of this is conveyed through gameplay and clever character animation alone. I didn't even have to play the scene with sound on, and you guys still knew what I was talking about. The simple contrast to how Nate carries himself when he enters the pub to when he exits is fairly impressive, and it goes a long way to humanize Nathan Drake. After all, it's important to show your character is vulnerable before you have him jump out of burning planes, so that way the danger is real. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is, I love these games, and while they may be far from perfect, I feel their strengths and weaknesses can teach us a lot about the game industry's past, present, and possible future. This is why I've decided to make October the month of Uncharted. Each week I'll be releasing a video on a single Uncharted game. These critiques won't be the long-form analyses that I usually do for who wore it better, so instead I will be focusing on a core element of each Uncharted game, and how this element has affected the overall gaming landscape. So yeah, feel free to tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog. Next week I'll be covering the very first Uncharted game, so be sure to stick around, or, subscribe, or, don't. I'm not your dad, I can't tell you what to do.